Good afternoon, Ghost Hunters. This is Rich from the New Jersey Ghost Organization, and this is the second video I'm going to put out in reference to my new EM pumps. I made a couple variations, and now I want to kind of like touch up on what I really feel is what I think is probably the best solution to most of the EM pumps that everybody's been putting together, whether it's 2 motors, 9 volts, 6 volts, two double A's, and etc. Let me first go over some of the components. We have the tray motors, which I actually found that the Samsung tray motors seems to work a lot better with mounting the magnets, even though you might have to pry up a little bit like I did on the other video which I showed you, but the Samsung seemed to have more of a flatter surface on top of the spindle. What I also what I tried to use is the rare earth magnet, the Solarium Cobalt. These are the high grade type 217s. I got the square ones, and they seem to mount very flush and very nice. But you can also use the they're also half-inch, both half-inch, the round magnets, which also mount fairly well. But you got to kind of like try to get them as even as possible and straight as possible on top of the spindle. What I also have is the mini micro switch, the 2 double A's, and the smaller of the box, of the Radio Shack box. This is I believe a 3x2x1. So this is the smallest of the boxes, which I'm probably going to be using from here on in. The assorted LEDs I got from Radio Shack, and the resistors I use are the 220 ohm resistor. They're 1/4 watt. The 1/4 watt, and I'm going to try using the tiny LEDs, the real small ones. And on the negative side of the LED is where you want to solder the 220 resistor. Okay, and from what I actually found out was, with the other variations I have here's the other boxes I've actually put together. These are 2 double A's, both single motor, and what I did was I used one with the larger LED, one with the smaller LED, and they both work actually really nice. Even the smaller LED puts out a nice glow to it. And what I found out about the 2 double A's was they run a lot quieter. Okay, and as far as the EMF field goes, you don't want to run these motors at a high RPM at 9 volts, which you can. You can run them at 9 volts, but you run the risk of either burning out the motor faster, you run the risk of possibly loosening up the magnet. It's going to fly off inside the box, and plus it's going to be much more noisy. What I found out was the EMF field is not much affected by either by the rotation of the magnets. But I did find that the dual magnets, the dual motor units run on 2 double A's, does run a little bit louder. The only difference is when you have dual motors versus single motors, they're going to run your field is going to be a little bit wider. You're going to have a little wider field of the EMF field, but as far as the distance goes, it's going to be practically about the same. Now, what I have my behemoth here, this is a two motor 9 volt 6 double A's. Now this you would not want to use inside. This I would use on cemetery investigations. You can leave it outside, away from anything, if you're going to do EVP sessions where you're not going to get the high hum. You can hear how loud it is. Okay? And this pretty much has the same wider EMF field, but the distance is probably about the same as the singles. But this also runs a lot faster, and the faster they run, the more louder they're going to be. So what I would recommend doing, as far as anybody else who wants to build these, go for the 2 double A's, use the single motor. You'll get the same distance as far as a good EMF field. Okay? And most of the times you want to use the resistors. You don't want to use what I found out, the LEDs along with the batteries, because they will either immediately burn out or burn out in time. You want to create some type of resistance. So that's a 220 ohm 1/4 watt resistor. And then the the Xbox 360 Samsung, I prefer the Samsung motors over the other brands like you got Light-On and so forth and so on, because the spindles are much more flatter, easier to work with. And if you can get the earth magnets. But other than that, that's about all I have. But what I'm going to go over for is the schematic I have for the single motor. So you have your battery, your two AA's, goes to the middle part of the switch, and then the positive to the motor, to the positive of the LED goes on the opposite side of the switch, the furthest one. And then your negative to your negative on your motor goes to the negative side, attaching to the 220 resistor. Red, green, LED, it doesn't make a difference. They all operate pretty much on the same. That's the schematic. It works very well. What I also found that on the dual motors, when you have the two motors, I have one going in one direction and the other one going in the opposite direction. And what I found out that happens is sometimes you get a pulsating, as you've seen in my other video. And what it's happening is, I believe that the poles are working against each other, which is creating that pulsating effect, which is making it a little bit louder too. But they do work well. But for inside investigations where you don't have to worry about the hum so much, go with your single motors. Single motors work just fine. You get a nice EMF field. And that's about all I have for now. So any questions, email me. Let me know if you have any suggestions or anything. But other than that, have a good day and happy hunting.